Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of Action Awareness, I want to talk about not one, not two, but three total actions that behave very similarly, the base breakers. Overgrowth of the killer plants, marking territory of the werewolves, and let's finish this of the vigilantes. All are designed to break a base instantly on your turn, although their triggers are different, and those differences create opportunities for each of them. At the highest level, I would say that Overgrowth is the most powerful of the three, with Let's Finish This as the weakest, with marking territory in the middle. In fact, Overgrowth is one of the most powerful cards in the game because, with few exceptions, that base is going to break on your next turn. But this doesn't make it my favorite of the three, an honor which goes to marking territory. I'm not sure that I have a favorite action overall in the game, but marking territory is definitely in the top three and probably my number one. Let's look at each action individually in the order I originally mentioned. As I stated before, Overgrowth is powerful. You can disenchant the card or even throw a stasis field on it, but in all likelihood, that base is going to score. I love the free-for-all this creates, as players have one turn to throw on as much power to try to win that base or at least get something for their efforts. Contrary to what you'd expect, Overgrowth isn't a guaranteed victory, especially when specials are involved. There are two extremely powerful combinations with this. The first is Crop Circles. You can play Overgrowth on a base and not even bother to play a minion. Why? Because you don't want to give the other players a chance to go crazy and break the base on their turn, invalidating the Overgrowth. Also, on your turn, you will just play Crop Circles anyway and bounce everyone back, including your minion from the previous turn. Then you could play a single minion and break the base by yourself, assuming no specials. This is powerful and really hard to counter, but those counters do exist. The second big play is with the card that, until someone at AEG sends me a cease and desist letter, I will continue to claim was named after me, El Bandito. When you play Overgrowth, it drops the breakpoint of a base, but does not destroy itself. Therefore, if you transfer it with El Bandito, that action will be dropped on the next base, and you can continue this as long as you are able. Each turn, you would have a head start on the Overgrowth base, and consistently have 2 turns to win that base, while your opponents only have 1. This combo only costs 1 upfront action as well, so you have full access to your regular plays to ensure that you win the base every time. But Overgrowth is frantic and requires the killer plants. I remember playing Killer Plant Shapeshifters one time, 2 factions that are extremely minion starved but work great together anyway. I was in a situation where I was 2 turns from losing and needed to do something desperate, so I threw Overgrowth on an empty base, not even having a minion to play on it. I was hoping that I drew a minion, and if I didn't do this, I'd lose anyway, so I needed to take a chance. I ended up drawing Venus Mantrap, my second to last minion, who summoned my last minion, a Sprout, and the 7 power plus my Shapeshifter action was enough to win the base and the game. It was extremely gutsy and it worked, but it shows that you aren't necessarily in complete control. And this is why I like marking territory so much more. Because if marking territory does what it's supposed to do, outside of specials, you are going to win that base. It breaks on your terms when you are already winning, and you still have a turn to manipulate the base further, such as destroying the minions on there to try to eliminate a player from the base. But if I'm being honest, I would estimate that marking territory works about 1/3 of the time in its optimal form. This is because the Howlers are your finishers and they don't work well with marking territory, since the power boost comes after the check. However, marking territory succeeds 100% of the time in its other function, persistently grabbing your attention, particularly in 2-player. You are playing minions on that base to prevent me from getting an easy victory, which means that I have successfully diverted you from the base where you want to be. I can still win normally by overtaking you as you add to the power creep, which isn't as good as the efficient break, but it is still effective. Marking territory is secretly an area control card, and I love that, as you are now playing minions on my terms, not yours. Combine this with further forms of detriment, and you will really make your opponents pay to get easy points. I also really like how marking territory has infinite time to make its move, especially when combined with the fact that the werewolves can play an extra action, which the killer plants cannot do. This allows you to play a card like Overrun, which prevents players from playing minions on that base, further increasing the likelihood that it will trigger early and save you minions. If you're playing zombie werewolves, you can do this 3 times and be remarkably efficient with your minions using a faction where efficiency does not matter. The Marking Territory combo also works really well with El Bandito, just with a little more planning. You can use El Bandito to move the Marking Territory to his base so that it triggers, then use Cab over Pete to move El Bandito over the next base you want to break. And since this is much more controlled than Overgrowth, it is less likely to backfire due to specials. And even if your opponent has a crazy amount of specials, you still already have a head start to accommodate them. In fact, if a player uses all their specials to overtake you anyway, I'd almost call that a win, since they are now completely deterministic for every other base and you have that much more certainty. I found that this action works really well on Ancient Temple, since the free 5-power boost is really hard to top, and the explorers have the movement actions needed to manipulate minions onto the right bases from Marking Territory. They can also easily move minions off the base, giving you an easy 4 points. The general question with Marking Territory is, would I give up a little potency for full control? Personally, I would do this in a heartbeat. The final action to consider is Let's Finish This, which despite the inclusion of the phrase printed breakpoint, results in the same effect with a different trigger. With all of these actions, monster addition to breakpoints are applied after the power reduction, so they'd all function the same. But where Let's Finish This really differs is in its trigger, since you are not in complete control of your own destiny. You need another player to have a minion there, which is going to change your approach. If you play this on an empty base, players will not see a reason to play there and help you trigger it. But if you play this on a base where they already have a minion, and then play a minion, you run the risk of losing, because you'd be comparing 2 minions to 2 minions, since they'd have another turn to respond. This is where movement becomes very critical. You can play it on their minion's base if you have a card like Scared Straight. While you could use this to send an opposing minion into Let's Finish This, it is far better to send it away from Let's Finish This, particularly after it triggers. Without your partner faction helping out, I see this action as being the most difficult to break a base by yourself, since it requires their participation. Unless someone is really confident in the power that they add, I really don't see them willingly complying with your request. I generally foresee players having at least 2 minions there, although this won't always be the case. So with Let's Finish This, I see this being used as an easy way to take over control of a base your opponent was already expecting to win and already played on. It is still possible to win the base by yourself if you use all of your best cards, such as Dusty Henry to take care of the minion that Scared Straight left behind, but I'm not sure if this is worth it. Despite these limitations, I still like the card, and more ways to use it accordingly are coming. If I had to summarize them in one word, what would it be? Burying. These are all great actions, and their differences make them stand out, as certain combos work better in situations than others. I'm really curious to see if Smash Up will ever create a 4th base breaker. I could definitely see a card similar to Helping Hands, where you are essentially conceding on a base you are losing by a significant margin. Perhaps you gain an extra VP or something for your concession. This would work great on a base like Rhodes Plaza Mall or Factory 436-1337, where you need to cut off opponents before they make their big move. I'm excited to see how this idea of breakpoint damage evolves over time. It's definitely an underutilized concept in my opinion. What's your favorite of the 3 base breakers? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.